Hello and welcome to the EX Conversation. This episode is a birthday special episode because it's my birthday, although I am filming this after, so it's not my birthday anymore. But for this episode, I have enlisted fellow Cancerian and friend Jenni Field, and we dive deep into why employee engagement is not a good measure, but specifically what you and employee experience in internal communication should be measuring to show your effectiveness. So tune in for a bit of fun and also some great work insight on employee engagement and experience. Let's get into it. Hi, Jenni, and welcome to the EX Conversation.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hi. It's a special episode for three reasons. One, well, the least exciting one is that I'm in a random hotel room in Berlin, not for any weird reason. That sounded weird as I said it aloud, but usually I film this from my flat because it's quite personal, but I had to do a last minute trip to a conference in Berlin. The second special reason is because it's my birthday. Thank you. And I'm excited to have you on as well because you're a fellow Cancerian. So I feel yeah. So I was like, if I'm going to do a podcast on my birthday, doing it with Jenni Field feels right. So,
there we go. I'm here for that. I'm here for the cancer energy.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I want to I'm going to start with an atypical question. Do you feel like your cancer energy manifests in your work and who you are at work?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, because I feel like we have this weird sixth sense about things.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that really plays into understanding people and understanding how people's behaviors and stuff like that. And I feel like that's kind of innate in a lot of Cancerians. So yes, definitely. You?
And probably fits really well for a communicator. Yeah, I do. It's so difficult though, because I feel like I sometimes have like a lot of gut instinct feelings about stuff, but like in the workplace is very data driven and tends to be logical. So you sometimes have to like ignore your gut instinct in some scenarios to watch things play out, which is not how not what I want to do all the time, but it's sometimes the reality of the workplace. I can't go around based on vibes and feelings, I guess.
Yeah. Imagine if you could, though. Imagine how different the world of work would be if it was all on vibes and feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what? Maybe that would be a great workplace. Maybe that's where we're going wrong.
I think it might be.
Yeah. So, tell me a bit about, so I actually know a bit about your career history and it's quite interesting. And now, you were my first foray into internal communication when I read your first book. So tell me a bit about your career history, how you got into writing about internal communication and some of your businesses. What's your kind of origin story?
Yeah, I love an origin story. So my background, so I suppose if I start from my degree, which was in marketing, which I didn't want to do because I wanted to go and do PR. But I did some digging around after my A-levels, which were not good. And turns out that back in those days, you had to have a degree to go and do PR. So I went off and did a degree in marketing and was always fascinated by consumer behavior when I was doing my degree. So my dissertation was on why people choose certain pubs on my local high street and the consumer behavior behind that. So I feel like that was my...
I feel that's good. That feels like a good calling. Well qualified. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I did my degree in marketing and then I got a job in local government in communications, doing everything. So I was doing press office, I was writing the community magazine, I was dealing with redundancies, we had elections. So you're kind of doing everything in that sort of role, which was brilliant. And I loved the press office side of things. So I decided to go and specialise in that. So I became media relations advisor, moving into the private sector as well. So I was working for a defence company. Did that for a little while, about 18 months or so, I think, and really enjoyed doing that, media relations, but it got quite formulaic and it was a lot of trade press. And anyone that's worked with the trade press knows that the trade press are very passionate about those topics. And I think if you're not as passionate about radars and things like that, it's very hard to match that energy. So, so it was kind of like, okay, I'm not sure that the PR side of it, maybe just in this space is quite for me. And I went back to what I loved when I was doing all of the different things of comms, and it was internal comms. So I went and worked for a advertising company called Thompson Local, who were like the Yellow Pages equivalent. And I was their first internal comms role. I was internal comms officer sitting in marketing. and setting up the function there. So looking at how we had like 16 sales offices, all those sorts of challenges of how you communicate with disparate workforce and big conferences and all those great things. Loved it there, and really enjoyed it. But I decided that I wanted to get a bit more experience with the internal comms industry. And therefore I went and worked agency side. So there was a local agency to me called the Blue Ballroom, who doesn't exist anymore. And I went and worked for them as business development manager. I should say it is not my fault it doesn't exist animore as their business development manager.
Yeah, how did that go,
Just
Jenni?
to clarify, it was really good. That was excellent. So I did some work there, and that is what really immersed me in the industry, because I think before then I didn't know much about internal comms as an industry, but when you go agency side, you turn up at the time Melkram conferences, and you see, so you see this sort of world that you didn't necessarily know existed, and I really loved that. That was when I started probably my interest in kind of research and reports, and I wrote my first white paper with Kevin McDougall, who I worked with at the time, and we wrote a paper on social media at work, because it was at that time where social media was sort of starting to come inside. So I did that for about 18 months, and then I really missed working in-house, and then I got a job working for a company called SSP, who are a food travel company in London, and I set up the function for them, and that was in internal comms, and we had 10,000 people in the UK, 8,000 making coffee and baguettes in train stations and airports, and I was with them for about 6 years, and I worked as internal comms manager, became head of internal comms for the UK, became group head of internal comms, and then became group or global head of comms once the company had floated. So I did quite a big stint there, about 6 years, and sort of worked my way up through there, which I loved. I really, really loved that job. And then I was headhunted to go and be communications director for a pharmaceutical company, set up the function there. They were going through a merger and acquisition, so there was a lot going on in there. And I did that for about a year, and then decided, if not now, when, to set up on my own. So that was 2017, set up Redefining Communications as a consultancy, really because I felt that if organisations could understand the power of communication, workplaces could be really different. And that's sort of been my calling card the whole time. So that's what started my sort of consultancy career. And then that's what led to writing the books, talking about internal communication as an antidote to the chaos in organisations, and then talking about the role that leaders play in terms of their credibility to create organisations that are trusted, respected, and good employee experience. And so that's where I am now, working with lots of different organisations of lots of different sizes, trying my best to help them be less chaotic and also helping their leadership teams be more credible.
You've got really interesting markers of different types of communications throughout your career. Like the Thompson Local is like an interesting one. Then you've got like the social media kind of communication. You've kind of got like a nice little timeline of methods of communication dotted throughout your career, which is quite an interesting way to think about it, because it kind of like it shows your experience with diverse types of communication, but also, I guess, from having read your first book, kind of gives you the foundation to talk about the value of it from the ground up in a way.
Yes.
Which is quite a cool thing.
Yeah, and I've worked, I think, setting up 4 different functions in very different industries is really interesting. I've always had a challenging audience. So Thompson Local was people out on the road, selling advertising space. In SSP, it was people in train stations and airports. Even though I was doing media relations in the defence organisations, you've got manufacturing and things going on there. With the council, you've got people out in parks and all sorts of stuff going. There's just, so I've always had this challenge and this interesting understanding of different organisations, different dynamics of people, and then kind of how you solve that puzzle, which I think is where my chaos to calm thing comes in, because that is, I have this sort of ability to see all these different component parts and to sort of pull the threads together and go, there we go, that's what it is. And that's what I love. That's what I really love.
Yeah. I think also, I guess you must like new challenges as well, because it's like you always like seeing something new, and then you fix that puzzle and then onto the next puzzle.
Yes. I'm 100% a fixer. 100, like, put me in, I'll fix it, and then I'll go.
Yeah. And then it could be any chaotic. So actually, you thrive on the chaos, really.
Yeah.
But then,
I do.
And the other thing that I thought was quite interesting is the kind of, let's talk about the research element, because you have elements of research and throughout your career, and also you have the white paper, you've got research that you did for your books.
Yeah.
What is it about research that you kind of keep coming back to? I know that sounds like a stupid question, but like,
I
because
know.
there is a lot of research out in this space. Like, what
Yeah.
kind of drives your need for research? Yeah.
So some of it, so my research into deskless workers, which I did first of all in 2019, then again in 2023. In 2019, that was honestly driven by the fact there wasn't really anything. And I think there's been a lot since then, due to tech companies coming in and doing more. So there's been more research since then. So that was driven by the fact that at the time, all we really had was Gallagher's State of the Sector report, which talked about channels, but it didn't talk about content and channels together. And I think that was my sticking point. Was you can say everyone's using, an intranet or everyone's using podcasts, but for what? Like what? So I'm just quite, I suppose, curious and inquisitive. So that drove some of that. Then I did some research into line managers, the role of line managers. That was 2021, because in COVID, lots of people said we don't need managers anymore because who needs those?
Yes.
And that's still going as a trend.
Yeah, that I was going to say that's probably come back up.
That has come right back up.
Yeah,
so I was interested in that. Then I did the research into what makes you a leader, someone who follows, which was for my book, Nobody Believes You. And then I've got a little bubbling idea about some research to do with employee engagement at the moment. But I think I come back to it because I have a lot of questions about work, about why work is the way it is, about why we behave the way we do. Like I have a lot of questions about that. And I have the ability, not all the time, but sometimes to really dig into that and go and find answers and see how we can solve these problems, because I don't believe my role is just about communication in organisations. It's much more about the organisational health. It's about the culture. It's all of those things coming together. And I think that we still have so many unanswered questions. So I feel quite strongly that somebody, and it might as well be me if no one else is, going to do the work to really dig underneath. But otherwise I'm just going to sit here and moan and no good comes of that. I'm just not that person. I'd rather be like, that's annoying. Let's go find out why, and then do the work to figure it out.
I love the research stuff as well. I feel like it's the one thing. I think if I wasn't, well, this might go a bit far, but if I wasn't in the role that I'm in, I'd like to be like an academic where always having like a new type of thing. I always like the idea of extracting something new and finding out something new that people haven't found out before. And you kind of do that. The more data you gather, the more insights you can pick, the narratives you can find. So I think that's really cool. For our next segment, we always deep dive into a topic that someone's got a strong opinion on. You have a lot of strong opinions. So...
Dude, I absolutely do. I absolutely do.
Yeah. I know you well enough to know that. So we could probably talk about any topic in the industry and debate it. So what topic did you pick to bring to me today?
So the topic I have brought today is employee engagement and whether or not it is the right measure for organisational health.
Yeah, so employee engagement is probably the one metric that is most commonly reported on externally, right? So there is kind of like a comfort to that, but like, where do your qualms come from?
So now I'm going to get on my soapbox. Let me just get on. Right, I'm on it now. Right. So I think this comes from, for the past year or so, I've been doing a weekly podcast with Chuck Ghost called Frequency that we do every week, and we read lots of different reports and articles. And over the course of that year, I've read a lot more about employee engagement, the measures, the stuff from Gallup, all that sort of stuff. And there's something quite exhausting about a measure that doesn't move, but still remains the measure. Like we're doubling down on something like a sunk cost fallacy. So if employee engagement, when they just come out now with their 2026 report for Gallup saying employee engagement is about 20%, right? That doesn't really move. I think it peaked in just after COVID when they saw a peak in, people feeling like their well-being mattered at work.
Yes, there was a great resignation and
so there was a big so there was a big thing about employee engagement doing quite well then when people thought leaders cared about them. And then it's sort of down. But even in that peak, it was like 25%. So if it's never going above those,
Yeah.
My question is it the right measure for organisations? Because if it's only ever going to be that amount, maybe that's the amount it's meant to be. So I've got some qualms about that. I don't want to be having a go at Gallup because that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's more about our relationship with work. So the bit that I sort of am thinking about at the moment is how we feel about work has changed since COVID. We've had so much talk now about boundaries at work, the generations coming into work, the fact that people don't want to work till 10 p.m, burnout, mental health. There's so many more things in our society now that we talk about. If you go back maybe 10 years, if you were looking at someone who is engaged in your organization, you might say, they stay late, they're really dedicated, they, pick
Hmm.
up my emails at weekends, right? All of that now is not okay. It was never okay, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're saying work isn't that now, and it is more, there's more boundaries to it, it's more like just part of your life, not your whole life. So what is it then that you want to see as a leader of an organization to show that your employees are engaged? What's the questions? What's the behaviors? What are the things you're seeing to say, actually, do you know what? Everyone here is working towards the same goal. They're working as hard as they can. There's no one here that's sabotaging. Excellent. Let's go. What does that look like now in an organization sort of post-COVID? And I just don't think the measures of employee engagement have caught up with the role of work in society.
Hmm. And actually, if you discuss from pre-COVID to COVID to that kind of like hybrid work, hokey cokey or hokey pokey, depending on what region you're in, then you've got like this whole this AI era now. There's like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've had a lot of compressed eras, as
Yes.
Taylor Swift would say, um, to for the same measure to exist. So that kind of makes sense. But then, like, I guess one of the reasons engagement continues to be relevant is the, I guess, archival data set,
Mm-hmm.
and then B, I don't know. I'm usually quite
It
good at
just because
yeah,
we've always done it. That's the only
yeah, yeah.
reason we've still got it. I think that's
I
probably
was hoping I
true.
would come up with something on the fly there. I'm usually good at that, but my mind just failed me. So,
It's
um,
fine.
So, but also, I guess it's kind of this idea of engagement, kind of looking about like the best work comes from employees that are like enthused and passionate,
Mm.
um, and so therefore like
But
care
does
about
it?
it.
But does it? And I think this is the question. So when you look at employee engagement, and if you look at it academically, which I did when I
Hmm.
was looking at the value of internal comms, which was another paper that I did with
Yeah.
Dr. Kevin Ruck, we ended up looking at engagement as a like an outcome of good internal communication. But engagement has to be split. So you can be engaged in the job that you do, but not engaged in the organization. So
Right.
say
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
a software developer, for example, you love coding, you're in the zone, you're doing all of that, but all of this company values and mission and all that, you can just, you can leave that alone. Like that to you is
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
nonsense. So you're engaged in the work, but you're not engaged in the organization. And you can flip that. You can have some people, it's not quite so common, I don't think, but you could flip that and have someone who's really, I love this company, I love the values, I love what it stands for, but I don't enjoy my work. Like I'm not enjoying this. And that can happen as well. So whereas what we see in most employee engagement measures is the combination of both,
Hmm.
which I don't think is fair, because I think there are some brilliant people who love their work, the skilled work that they're doing, but
Hmm.
they might not love the company because they might just work there because it's local or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're measuring both of those things, and then you don't really know what they're engaged in.
Yeah. It
So
conflates the whole
that's
thing.
exactly. So when you're saying
Yeah.
like they're really, they're dedicated, they're this, what is it like? They might not be. They might be dedicated to their task and their job, but they might not be dedicated to the big brand or the big organization. And I think that's an important distinction to start to talk
Hmm.
about.
So there's that measure of like eNPS, which is like Employee Net
Yeah.
Promoter Score, which I guess is the bigger one, right? It's to do with
Yeah.
like, the same way, like, would I promote this brand or company I buy from? Would I
Yeah.
promote this company that I work for? And then I guess there's like but then that doesn't ultimately mean anything to the business. Oh, I guess
No.
it could. It could mean like better recruitment, but it doesn't really mean anything
What?
to
But
do
it doesn't.
to
And
what
I did.
end.
And like, what? Yes. To what end? Like if I
Yeah.
said, oh, I would recommend it here. It's my favorite phrase. To what end? Then I don't know what that shows you as a leader. Does it show you that I think it's great here, or that my team are great, or that the fact that I have flexible benefits is, there's so many variables as to why I would recommend something. It's like going to a restaurant. You know, you might recommend it because it's just, you know, the service is amazing, but the food's not. Do you know what I mean? There's so many different reasons why you might say to somebody to go. Also, it's so nuanced in terms of who would thrive in that culture and who wouldn't. You know, we've all had different experiences in organizations where we've loved it and other people have hated it. And you're like,
Yeah,
really?
for
It's
sure.
great.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's a helpful measure. I don't have an answer here, by the way. This is part of why I feel like there's more questions here than I've got answers, but I want people to think about what is it we really want to look at? Take the word engagement off the table. If that word didn't exist, what is it you're really looking at?
And I think that's where it comes back to this. Interestingly, I'm at this conference in Berlin, Internet Reloaded, and there was a speaker from Schneider Electric, and her title was VP of Communication and Impact. And so therefore her metrics were it sounds silly, but sometimes having it in the title, because you have like internal comms and engagement, right? You have loads of roles that have it like that, or just engagement, but actually it's not clear what it's doing. And so what you then get is, in her presentation, she had certain impact to do with speed. So it was about like quickness to react and quickness to communicate. Quickness, is that a word?
Yeah, we'll take it for now.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Just,
yeah, speed. Yeah. Yeah, no,
I don't know.
two great communicators on the school, and we can't even get our English right. And then the other impact measures that she had was to do with product, like product understanding, and how people then understood what they did as a business. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense, because you've taken that communication and you've proven the impact there.
Yes.
But so that satisfies the kind of internal communication types role. But then you've got the need, I guess, for businesses to have some sort of unified measure that they report on. And maybe that we don't need that at all.
No. And this is what I think is the problem, is I think leaders have been made to believe that we need to have some unified measure that's like some arbitrary number that you can talk about. And in fact, I wrote about this in my first book, because I was interviewing Benjamin Ellis, who runs Social Optic, and we've done a lot of our research. My research has been done with him, certainly the deskless workers. And I was interviewing him for the book about data and how you do all that stuff. And he talked about the fact that employee engagement is so arbitrary. It's like asking if your company is, you know, bacony, like how bacony are we today? You know, we're 20%. Like, there's no, it doesn't mean anything. If you say, we've got 78% engagement, I don't know what that means. I don't know whether does that mean that your retention is good? Does that mean that you don't have much sickness? Does it mean that your managers have been properly developed into, you know, being like this? There's so many different things, but it's like we want this one metric. Whereas I'd love to see the component parts broken down, and actually people talking about, you know, do we have strong leaders and managers? You know, have we trained them? Is there a development program for them? Do we have, you know, good development of our people so that they stay, so that they feel valued? You know, what are our benefits like? Because it's so many component parts that I think you're right. I think having this one big number is completely arbitrary. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
And also there's this obsession. It's taking a engagement out of the question. I still, in my role where I speak to enterprise organizations, they will be obsessed with benchmarking without it'll be like, so how are we doing compared to others? I'm like,
yes.
Hang on, but like, what about compared to yourself? Like, what are your goals? But still, I think it's a leadership thing. Maybe it's kind of like is it like this macho idea of like, we need to look better than our neighbor or something, is like keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, but it's true, isn't it? And I think we've had it for years. I've had to do it. When I did my deskless worker research, the companies that took part, which they do for free, they get a report. They all wanted to know how they compared to others. And I was like, but you're a healthcare organization, and you're a retailer, and you're a manufacturer. Like, you're entirely different. So, but sure, we can benchmark, and people, we love to compare, don't we? I think that's part of us as social animals. Like, we like to know where we sit in the pecking order of different things and all that sort of stuff. But I think part of that is the challenge, because you're constantly trying to outdo people on a metric that almost again, doesn't really mean anything. And depending on how you've measured it, not everybody has a standardized way of measuring employee engagement. People use different things. So some
Yeah.
people will say, oh, we're 78%. Somebody goes, oh, we're 69. Well, but actually, is it the same? Are you comparing, unless you're all doing Gallup or you're all doing another provider who I'm sure exists?
Yeah.
Then how are you even, you're not even comparing apples and apples.
Different
And I think
method,
that's,
exactly, different methodologies.
yeah.
And also it's just like not, and then it's like, once you've then compared, you then like, okay, like to what end? Because we've just agreed that engagement actually can confuse and conflate different things and doesn't actually speak to business value in any particular way.
And I think that's the thing. It doesn't really link to impacts, and it doesn't link, I think, concretely enough to business value. I think you can pull that thread of engagement, productivity, you can see the thread that's being pulled through that. But I don't think I think there's a shorter distance to get to that if you just take engagement off the table. And in fact, in a recent conversation with Chuck, we were talking about what would it take for us to get back to the office, because we're always having this discussion about return to office. And we were talking about the commute. For a lot of people, it's the commute. And I was saying, oh, I would love it to be at that level where you'd have a drive. I remember one of my old CEOs would have a driver. And I said, that would be delightful. And he was like, maybe that's what companies need to do to drive engagement. It's like improve the commute for everybody. So there's all these different elements that are important to people that would link to the engagement, but they're really tiny and individual. And I think that that's really hard to then, extrapolate up into an organization. But I think that there's just lots of different parts to it. And actually, the end of that conversation with Chuck, we decided that engagement was only a word that you really used about work. So you don't ever say, at a dinner with friends, like, I'm really engaged in this dinner right now.
Yes, it's
never.
so right. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually wild when you think about it. It's quite funny. It's quite funny and odd in a way. But it comes with so many. This is what I try to break the barriers between like personal and work, because I feel like it makes it a bit more human on both sides. Well, I mean, hopefully my personal life is human in the first place, but like, I feel like it's nice to like understand what people are working on, like what they're passionate about, but then also like makes the whole work experience a bit more human, and you can communicate better one-to-one and then in teams, versus like creating terms that mean nothing outside of the context of work, as if we're in like this severance type reality where before we move on, I wanted to like test this idea one more time, because I was thinking, well, I guess one of the potential ideas, one of the reasons people supposedly like engagement is to do with like, I guess, like high performance teams and high performance culture. And I was thinking about my immediate team at the moment, where like I feel like there's a few people involved that are super passionate about what they do, and are willing to be challenged, are willing to challenge, are willing to test new ideas. And when I think of how this cohort in a smaller team come together, I think, oh, like actually this breeds exceptional outcomes. And I'm like, that is, I can see it in a small capacity and think, okay, well, how do I scale that? And someone would say, well, let's measure the engagement score to see how that scales or whatever. But like, if I personally wanted that outcome, if I'm someone watching this that wants that sort of outcome, I could be a smaller company, I could be a large company that wants to build something that I'm passionate about and innovate. Like, how can I actually not just do that, but measure that in a way? What would you measure
so
to
I
try
think,
and understand that?
So if that was, let's take that and replicate that somewhere else, I think you've got to do the pre-work for that in terms of that, what people are interested, they're passionate about, what skills have they got, like what are they bringing to the table. I think also when it works really well is because the end goal is really clear, like we're all working towards something, so it feels meaningful. So this need for meaningful work, I think, is really important. So I think you've got all of those things to kind of understand, to put the right team together. And then to come back to your point about the keynote that was communication and impact, the outcome is the goal. So the outcome is the goal, and making sure, for me, it would be making sure that people aren't burning out, that they're still engaged, they're feeling listened to, they're feeling valued. And those are the things that I would want to be measuring. But I think it's how you measure that's also important, because you could just do a
Mhm.
survey and people tick some boxes and
Right. Yeah.
yay,
Yeah.
look at us, we're
Mhm.
amazing. But I think you've got to be quite tuned in to human behavior, a bit of psychology, that sort of stuff,
Yes.
to
Mhm.
to see that and understand it. I don't know how you measure it, because I think you've got lots of different questions, and I think you probably need a data scientist like Benjamin to probably help you with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that, I suppose, my challenge back to somebody that wants to do it is, you tell me what behaviors you want to see and what you don't want to see, and then let's measure, then let's look for those, and we can measure that without probably having to ask people questions anyway. Are you
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
people asking questions? Are you seeing people curious? Are people showing up? Does it feel like the meetings are productive and everyone's
Mhm.
being included? There's lots of things like that I think
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
observe and look at without having to do surveys and stuff to do it.
I agree. And actually, this kind of idea of rather than trying to scale something for a data point for the sake of it, maybe just using like what's that term where you kind of like extrapolate from
Yes.
certain you
Yeah.
like dive into certain teams, do some work, discovery work to see like what behaviors are done, what are the outcomes that are
Yes.
created from that, to then extrapolate out and then work
Yeah.
out, okay, are we creating something here that meets the needs of the organization? And I think that's probably a good way to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think looking at behaviors, not just your values, but looking at the behaviors, how you're managing accountability, all of those things,
Yeah.
that's the messy human side of work that nobody
Hmm.
wants to do because it's messy and
Yes.
human.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the stuff that's going to really change your relationships at work, which is
Yeah.
ultimately what we're talking about when it comes to that engagement and employee experience.
Yes, love. So let's talk about some of the human side. So for our next section, I like to ask questions that sometimes are a bit silly. I just kind of see where it goes.
Hmm.
But one of the things I wanted to ask, you've had like a great career and you've written a lot of advice, white papers, books. And so let's simplify all of that to like what's one piece of advice that you wish you'd known at the start of your career?
What's one piece of my advice I wish? So for me, It was said to me when I was comms director, and I wish it had been said to me when I was communications assistant, and it
Hmm.
is that you need to get comfortable in the grey. And I think we like things to be very black and white. It's this or it's this. And I think the more senior you get, the more you understand there is grey. And I think that I wish I'd understood more of the need for nuance and the more of that greyness that plays a role in business that I probably didn't have when I wanted it. It's black or it's white when I was a bit more
Yeah.
junior.
I think that's also that is good advice, if not for one thing being like coming over this obsession with like defining the role and the
Hmm.
purpose. I know that this is
Yep.
like some of the Gallagher research speaks to this, is like the like, are we wasting our time just defining our
Yes,
purpose when actually we could be yeah, yeah. Yes, and I feel like that's good advice, because you can get lost in that
you
cycle of
can.
trying to define something, but
Oh,
actually we're in very human based roles, and so therefore let's like lean into that and be operate in the
yeah.
gray.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you should have a purpose for your function. But I think that if you try, I mean, then this was a conversation that came up with the internal comms research hub that I'm part of
Hmm.
about, should we try and define internal comms? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, let me just do a quick search on HR and finance and see if they've got set definitions. They don't.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
several,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
forget it. What a waste of
yeah.
time. So, like, no.
Yes, yeah. And and so as if you're an internal comms person, and um so and you're like, okay, I'm not going to be obsessed with defining the specific things that the purpose of this is for. We should have a purpose as a team, but I want to make sure I'm going to put myself in the best position to operate in
Hmm.
the grey. What are some, what's like a underrepresented or undervalued skill that someone like that should get in their bow, string in their bow?
So I think that's self-awareness, which I know sounds a bit loaded, and there's going to be people listening to
Yeah.
this thinking, Jenny needs to
This is about
have a
you
little
if you're
moment
watching
here.
this. Yeah.
I'm aware,
Yeah.
but I do think there is a self-awareness piece. I don't think I mean, I have spent a lot of time understanding myself through different things like DISC and reading a lot and all different things.
Mhm.
I'm not saying I've got it nailed, but I feel like I know who I am. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I don't think we spend enough time doing that. And I think when you're certainly in a role of internal comms or employee experience, you're involved with so many different stakeholders. You're being, you've got lots of pressure in terms of all these different requests coming in. I think if you don't know yourself or know your impacts on others, I think that makes work really hard. And I think that's a skill that we probably haven't invested in enough in our careers. I was lucky to get some investment in that early on, and I do think that that's something everybody should have in their career.
Yeah. Also, I think I totally agree. And I think one of the things that contributes to that, and you have like a really strong network, you've got your like friendships with Advita and Trudy, and I like tuned into that podcast as well, and like hearing that dynamic. You create spaces where people can challenge each other and can like hold a mirror up. And I think that is like part of the, because I think if go back to my earlier point around like this idea of like complete separation between the two, when actually it's nice to have some mixed spaces, because it then like grows you as a person and invites people into challenge, and also invites people that know you inherently inside out to give that feedback, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
And so also we have this concept on this podcast of like employee experience room 101, which is based on this. So it's like, what one thing or concept or person would you would you like to put in the trash? no one has said a person yet, so
I hadn't really considered a person.
It can't be me. I don't have the self-awareness.
Certainly not on your birthday.
No,
So it's got to be employee engagement. I've got to put that.
Yes, yeah. And you've done a good job convincing there as well. So, and last but not least, what's the question for? So we have a question from the last guest for the next guest.
Oh, okay.
And usually Amber is on here and she'll tell me what the question is. Oh, she's sent it to me via
legend
message. What a legend. Thank you. So the question, very professional of me. I'm very well prepared for this podcast. So as I very, very well prepared earlier, what's the thing that you've been most wrong about?
Oh, that is a good question.
Yes, because you're not wrong about anything.
Well, it's tricky. I might be here a while. I think I have been most wrong. I would say believing that everybody would want the belief that everybody wants to be treated how you want to be treated. So I think that is something that I probably believed, and that could not be could not be more untrue. Like, everyone is so individual, and I think that we're brought up to believe, like, treat people how you want to be treated. And I think that is something that I was most wrong about when I think about how I might approach different meetings, or how I might approach sort of work relationships and things like that. And I think because I've learned more about inclusion, about neurodiversity, all of those things, I think that that's something I would say would be on you were most wrong about that.
And I also feel like I've only recently come to that conclusion, and we'll come to bring the loop back around. Like, we're both cancers, and so I think there are ways in which we think and feel about people in and out the workplace, and actually, like, it's not. I assume that everyone has or feels that certain way, and actually, you're right. That's not the case at all, and that is quite interesting to. It's good to know that, because otherwise you can't individualize and personalize and deal with people correctly. And I think that is actually, good advice.
Thanks.
And that brings us, actually, let me collect your question for the next guest as well. So,
yes. My question is, who is a leader in business that you really admire?
Amazing. Love that. Jenni, thank you so much. I'll be seeing you at Unite as well, so I'm really excited to have you back. And I'm sure you'll be picking up lots of these topics on the Frequency Live podcast as well. So, sure. Jenni, thank you so much. Love speaking to you. If you enjoyed the episode, then remember to click to subscribe, because there's much more where that came from. And let us know in the comments which bits you've enjoyed and found super insightful. Also, if you would like to be part of the EX conversation and feature on the podcast, then please get in touch.